Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I thought today I'd do a review of the latest episode of Game of Thrones, episode 4. So if you guys haven't seen this current episode, I'd suggest maybe you leave until you do, or if you've already watched this episode or you just don't care about spoilers, welcome aboard! Let's talk Thrones! So to begin the show, we start off with, of course, a big old funeral scene, and I'm just kind of looking around like, there's no way there's only this many bodies to burn. There's gotta be a lot more, right? And while Jon's giving a speech, I'm just kind of looking at him like, oh, you're sounding a little bit winded there, buddy, because he's all like, and we will never see their like again. Oh, I've been doing this show too long. Oh, heart attack. Dany whispers something into Jorah's ear while he's lying there on his pyre because he died last episode. And I really hope they actually go into depth about what she said to him. I'm sure it was something touching, but I just like closure with those little details. I don't know why, I'm just weird. Gotta say, the bodies went up pretty quick. Everyone's dry as hell in the north, I guess. I don't know. And before I go any further, I've been hearing a lot of backlash online about people criticizing the directors of this season. I just gotta say, like, are these the guys that are funding this season of Game of Thrones or the previous season of Game of Thrones? Because I'm not sure that's the case, because I don't think it's these guys that have been shelling out the money all this time, and then they're just like, yeah, you know what, we're wrapping up because we don't want to keep spending all this cash. As I know it, I'm pretty sure that's all on the shoulders of HBO. And as I understand it, the show's being wrapped up because it just costs too much, because they're basically spending the same amount of money to actually make a actual movie that would go on the big screen per episode for Game of Thrones, and they just can't keep up with that kind of spending anymore. And they're forcing the directors to wrap up rather quickly and rush something that just simply can't and should not be rushed. And yet we're acting surprised that it's not as good of quality that we wanted it to be for the final season of Game of Thrones. It just seems rather unfair, really. Which does bring up another question. As I know it, there's already a spin-off series in the process of being made that will be released in either November or October, one of the two, along with the extra rumors that there's going to be 2 more spin-off series happening. Allow me to try to wrap my brain around this information. So HBO is cutting short Game of Thrones, probably one of the most watched and popular shows on TV probably ever, because of budget reasons, yet they somehow at the same time have already greenlit not 1 but 3 spin-off series. Now, how about, and follow me on this one, we cancel those spin-off series and we take that money that they would spend on those shows and give it to Game of Thrones so that they can effectively wrap up the show in a detailed manner that we have all been anxiously waiting for all this time. Because frankly, I just think we've earned it because we've waited this long, and it just shouldn't be as rushed and as sloppy as it's becoming. If you agree with me, comment below. Let me know. I just want to hear your thoughts on this. It just seems odd to me. But back to the story. We then go into this big feast where everyone's celebrating their victory over the Night King, and Daenerys calls Gendry up and remarks how he is the son of Robert Baratheon, and I'm like, oh great, she's gonna bring up more needless drama at this point. And she's basically like, yeah, you're now Lord of Storm's End because I'm legitimizing you as Robert Baratheon's son and heir. You are now Gendry Baratheon. And I'm just like, I'll follow you till I die. Any decision you make now, I'm on board. House Baratheon for the win, baby. House Baratheon is back, baby. Yeah! But of course, when it comes to George R.R. Martin, whenever he gives something, he has to take something away. We learn that Brienne's a virgin, and instead of getting with the obvious choice, she gets with soy boy Lannister no hand. Dashes my hopes and dreams of House Giantsbane. It was so perfect. This show is now officially pointless. I have no idea why I keep watching it. Just for the abuse, I guess. At least Tormund's alive. I'm banking on the hope that this show ends with Brienne just realizing her mistake and running to him, hunting him down, hitting him over the head with a club, dragging him back to Winterfell, and getting to work on starting on House Giantsbane. Give me a minute. Go to the next thing. Go to the next thing. And Gendry almost immediately runs to Arya and is just like, I was just made a Baratheon, baby. So come on down to Storm's End with me and become my lady. Da 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 da. And Arya's just like, no. And Gendry's just like, how the past has repeated itself. A Baratheon hitting on a Stark and the Stark wanting nothing to do with him. An entire Targaryen dynasty was destroyed under similar circumstances. Uh-oh. We then get another makeout session between Jon and Dany, and I'm just sitting there like, you guys really haven't accepted the fact that she's your fucking aunt! I mean, at this point, can you really blame the guy? Fuck! And at a moment where they break away from one another, Dany's just like, you can't tell anyone about who you really are, otherwise it screws with my position of inheriting the throne. And it's just sort of like, you're both Targaryens, why can't you just rule together? And even Tyrion later on is like, yeah, they're both Targaryens, why can't they just rule together? We'll get to that in a minute. And Jon, bless him, is just like, look, I need to tell my family, I need to be honest with them, and I can serve you and still tell my family. It's okay, we can do both ways. And that's the thing about Jon, he's always tried to play both sides of the fence, where he's like, look, we can have option A and option B simultaneously. It can work, we can coexist together all the time. We just have to do it my way. And Daenerys basically responds to that, we can coexist with my way, bitch. I don't know, it just seems like needless confrontation, because it's just like, you guys understand all of his decisions are correct, right? Like every decision he's made would just work perfectly if you just went along with it and quit questioning it all the time. So why are you questioning it all the time? But Daenerys is throne hungry, so you know, happy wife, happy aunt, happy life. I don't know how that works. Which is another thing. Dany came to Westeros with the intent to marry one of the lords, and she's definitely chosen Jon to be her spouse. She likes Jon. She loves Jon. She is in love with Jon. They still kiss each other like they are together, even though they are definitely aunt and nephew, even though they refuse to talk about it, understandably. Given the boat ride they had to the north, I'm sure there's things they just don't want to talk about. But for her to marry one of the lords, or marry Jon, if she becomes queen, he would become king. So no matter what direction they take, Jon would still become king, and therefore would be given more authority over everything than Daenerys. So I'm not sure where her mindset is, where it's like, well, we can't have you tell people who you really are, otherwise they'll make you king. And it's just like, yeah, it's almost like that's exactly what would happen if we just went along with the direction that you want to go with, which is just, I stay Jon Snow, and then we later get married, and then I become king anyway. I'm doing the math, nothing's adding up. This is just not making sense. And later on, they're in a war room having a council meeting where they discuss the losses they suffered for the Battle of Winterfell. And not only was the Night King not just an ice Terminator zombie, but he was also basically Thanos, because apparently he had basically wiped out pretty much exactly half of Jon and Dany's armies. Which immediately I was just like, bullshit. There was an estimated 10,000 troops in the Northern Army, and you're telling me 5,000 survived the battle for Winterfell? And that would also mean for the Unsullied, that's an estimated 3,000 to 4,000 troops for a grand total of nearly 8,000 to 9,000 soldiers in Winterfell. Mind telling me where the fuck they were when all this was going down? They were hiding behind Brienne, wasn't they? They were hiding behind, she's a big lady, I get that. I mean, she could definitely hide 8,000 to 9,000 troops behind her. I'll remember this, HBO. Anyway, Dany wants to immediately march on King's Landing, and for once in this entire season, Sansa says something of sense, where she's just like, hey, how about we give our forces enough time to recover from their wounds? And Dany's just like, wait, you want me to postpone my victory against the Lannisters? And it's just sort of like, you understand that benefits everyone because it gives your dragon time to heal and it gives your troops time to heal? No, march them immediately after this intense battle where they're probably still wounded. That's probably going to leave your troops real fresh for the upcoming battle. That's tactically smart. Yeah. Anyway, Jon cuts in trying to prove his loyalty to Dany and is just like, we are following Dany's orders. We made a commitment to her cause and we're following through. And as soon as basically everyone's out of the room, Arya and Sansa are just like, we need to have a serious discussion right now. So Arya, Sansa, and for some reason Bran take Jon to the Godswood tree in the middle of Winterfell, and they have a conversation about like, wait, why the fuck are you being so agreeable with Daenerys? She's obviously crazy about her decision making. This doesn't make sense. And Jon's just like, she's my boo though, and she's my aunt, but we're not going to discuss about that ever, ever, ever. Ever. And eventually Jon just looks at Bran and is like, tell him, Robot Overlord. So Jon gets both Sansa and Arya to agree to secrecy before he has it revealed that he is truly a Targaryen and not a Stark. And Sansa has that information for all of, I don't know, 5 minutes before she immediately tells Tyrion, with very little provocation, might I add, and reminding us all exactly why you never tell women anything, ever! Let me put this into perspective for you. Ned Stark literally kept this secret for 18 years straight and took it to the grave. Sansa had it for 5 minutes and now half the kingdom knows. Never tell women anything! Anyway, Jon gets ready to leave with the army to meet Dany at King's Landing and straight up gives a cold shoulder to Ghost before he leaves. Doesn't even give him a pat before he goes. And it's just like, dude, that direwolf fought for you for the Battle of Winterfell and lost part of his ear. At least give him like a scratch or something. Like, fuck. Jon Snow, cold as ice. Damn. Before Tyrion leaves with Daenerys, there's a scene with him and Jaime sitting together, and Bronn comes in, having been given a deal in a previous episode by Cersei to go and kill both Tyrion and Jaime, shows up with the crossbow and has a conversation with him about what he's earned, basically. So now we're back to the scheming once again, and eventually they work out a deal, but not before Bronn nearly puts a bolt straight into Jaime's head, and I was like, so close. Then Brienne could go back to her one true love. Fuck! And then he just sort of trolls off to be a wild card in the background. I have no idea how that loose end is going to get tied up in this story at all. It's just, Jesus Christ, this story. Dany decides to fly down with Drogon and Rhaegal, and remember how in the previous episode I talked about how the only way I could see Cersei's side winning is if a lot of bullshittery just started to happen? Well, it looks like I guessed that because that's exactly what ends up happening. Daenerys is in mid-flight between Winterfell and King's Landing, and she's on Drogon. Rhaegal's flying next to her and just out of nowhere starts getting pelted with ballista bolts, and just he immediately drops. He gets shot in the throat, blood splurts everywhere. He takes more shots than Viserion ever did when he got hit by the Night King's javelin toss and just drops dead into the ocean below. And Euron Greyjoy comes out of nowhere with a fleet with a bunch of ballistas attached to it, all like, yeah, bagged me a big one today. Daenerys is pissed and starts flying towards him, ready to burn his fleet, but then she realizes, oh, this is my last dragon. I better get the fuck out of here, and just flies him away, and again, miraculously misses getting shot by a bunch of ballista bolts. But then that does leave her remaining fleet open to the Greyjoys as they immediately start tearing apart her ships. Grey Worm tells Missandei to get on one of the life rafts and get the fuck out of Dodge. They all end up eventually just jumping overboard because their ships are just getting obliterated by the giant ballista bolts. And Grey Worm ends up getting to shore and looking around and is just like, where's Missandei? Which it turns out she got captured by the Greyjoys, which I don't understand how that's possible, because it's like, did you not see where the other Unsullied troops were swimming to when you were in that life raft? It's like, you had every opportunity to just get away. And in fact, you were the first one to get away. So I don't know how you got caught in the first place. None of this is making sense. Why would you even stay in the ocean? Why wouldn't you immediately start paddling towards land? I just don't get it. None of this is making sense because it's rushing too fast, because HBO's a dick. That's all I know. And Daenerys is rightfully pissed, and she's just ready to burn King's Landing to the ground at this point. And Varys begins to chime in that, hey, you know, you're starting to turn into the Mad Queen. I would tell you to your face that you're making the wrong decision here. And it's just like, shut the fuck up. You don't know what you're talking about at this point. But they end up working out a plan that they'll give Daenerys every single possible chance to surrender before she burns King's Landing to the ground. And Daenerys is just looking at this like, I'm fine with that. Yeah, I'm fine with that. It'll at least look like to the citizens that will survive that I gave her every chance to surrender and she didn't take it. So everything that happens to them is not on me at that point. It's on her. Dastardly? Maybe. But at this point, I'm kind of on board with her. Then Tyrion and Varys have this scene together where they're talking about who should be on the Iron Throne together. And again, Tyrion is giving every reason why Jon and Dany should just both rule together. And Varys is just saying, nope, that can't work. That can't work at all. Nope, it has to be Jon, or I have to kill Daenerys because she's now the Mad Queen. All of a sudden, for some reason, which is just completely unfair. And I'll get to that in a minute. But the biggest problem I found with this particular scene is that Tyrion himself goes, Jon doesn't want the job. And Varys counters with, well, it might not matter about what Jon wants. And it's just sort of like, shouldn't it? Just imagine this conversation. Jon, yeah, you're king now. No. I'm not sure where to go from here. But for some reason, this is Varys' logic. It's just, if he doesn't want the job, and he refuses the job, again, we're coming to this situation where the math isn't adding up to make sense. It's just, we're going from A to Q2 with no transition in between. I don't know what's going on. None of this is making sense. We then come to King's Landing, where Daenerys is outside with a very small entourage of Unsullied with Tyrion, and you see the walls of King's Landing are just lined with those giant ballistas, and I'm just like, like, why the fuck isn't she just firing upon them and just killing Daenerys right then and there? She would stand no chance and would immediately die, and then this whole war would be over. Again, this is just not making any sense. I'm starting to see a pattern here, and it's not good. Oh my god. But Cersei sends Qyburn out. Tyrion goes over to Qyburn, and they both have a conversation where they're both basically like, yeah, we both demand the unconditional surrender of the other side. And Tyrion's just like, know what? Fuck this guy. He goes and talks directly to Cersei, where he's just pleading with her to stand down and trying to appeal to her motherly side now that he knows that she has a baby. And, you know, it's funny that Euron just isn't like, hey, I only just recently found out that you're pregnant with my child, and Tyrion hasn't been here this entire time to know this, so how the fuck does he know about that? But again, Cersei just has to be the real Mad Queen of anything and just decides, yeah, you know what, I'm just gonna ignore all this logic and reasoning because why start now? And then she orders the mountain to cut off Missandei's head, and frankly, this scene disturbed me the most because when her body falls and splats on the ground, it just splat, and I'm like, oh! But not before Cersei whispers into her ear, any last words, now is the time. And to which she says, Dracarys, which I just found completely jarring for her character because I would never peg Missandei as the kind of person to be like, yeah, Dany, burn this entire city filled with innocent people just to the ground. Yeah, I want to have that on my conscience that all those innocent people are going to die before I die. And you know, it happens all right in front of Daenerys and Grey Worm. Grey Worm has to turn away because it's like, my boo, no! Anyways, after Daenerys sees this, she just basically turns away with her resting bitch face like, oh, I'm just going to burn this entire castle to the ground with everybody in it. I'm just done. And I see everyone on the internet going like, oh, she's now the Mad Queen. It's just like, put yourself in her position for just a moment. She showed up to Westeros with an entire army and 3 fully grown dragons, and because she was so focused on helping other people, she's basically lost her entire army and almost all of her dragons, and now her position of power that she was once in is now compromised. She might very well lose this war and lose any chance of taking back what she feels is rightfully hers, all because of other people telling her what to do and them fucking up. Mad Queen? I would say so. The woman's pissed as hell, and I think rightfully so. And I think at this point she should just burn that entire city to the ground. And I know what some people might say is like, oh, but think of all the innocent people that died. Let's not forget for a second, these are the exact same people that were cheering for the beheading of Ned Stark. That entire city and all those people can rot for all I care. Burn it to the ground. Anyway, that was just my take on the episode. I've got to say overall, it's just, this entire episode was just a clunky mess that had more scenes that just didn't make sense or just felt extremely forced rather than the well planned out and detailed story that we've been used to this entire time. And it's just all due to the fact that this show has been rushed to conclude, and I just don't understand why that was ever even considered a possibility for this show. Like, it just shouldn't have even been on the table. The show should have been given all the funds it needed to wrap up in an appropriate and well-detailed manner, because we've waited this long and we waited 2 extra years for this final season just to get less Game of Thrones. So I'm extremely disappointed with how things are panning out, and I really hope with these final 2 episodes it'll stick the landing, but right now I'm losing hope fast, and I'd really like to hear what you guys have to say about this matter. If you like this video, or if you agree with this video, give me a like. If you'd like to see more, give me a subscribe. I try to post every week, and if you'd ever like me to talk about any other subject, just comment below. I always like to give you guys what you want, and as always, I hope you have a great rest of your day. See ya.